The other issue that we might be concerned about, a similar kind of situation, but maybe less intense. Maybe I should have said this one first. Is if let's say there's this sweater in a shop, okay, that you like, and there's only one left, and someone else also likes it, and somebody or somebody you don't know, right? Are you like, let's say somebody expressed interest in it, looked at it, and then you like kind of come in and buy it. Are you
saying that the boy is the sweater?
Yeah, the boy is the sweater in this situation. Okay, fine.
Comparison is slightly problematic. Like, let's say like Tari and I are shopping together. We see this hat.
Yeah.
That's fine. We see this hat. We both like this hat. But it's the only one left.
Yeah.
The hat doesn't have autonomy. The hat doesn't have choice. The hat doesn't have feeling.
Okay.
So we just need to work it out in a mature way. But it's like Tari and I both like the same guy.
Like maybe we could just ask him.
Right. Mm-hmm. Also, like it's. I feel like a lot of the superior movies, with the two like men like the same woman, like they have to like fight for whoever's gonna get her, but like what if she doesn't like either of them? Like,
right. Right.
Like it. Like,
excuse me one second. No, I just want to make sure. Can you guys hear Noah talking or not so much? No. Kacha. Okay. I'm just wondering if I turn it this way. Can you guys talk, Noah? Let's just see if they can hear you now, because I want everyone to be able to participate.
Yeah, okay, so the difference between two friends both wanting the same like dress.
Can you guys hear now? Better? Yeah, it doesn't change much. What if I put I don't know if I put the computer farther away. I don't know if anyone will hear.
No, it was okay before when Noah was speaking.
What's that?
I think
Wait, I can't hear you. 1 second.
It was okay when Noah was...
You can't hear Noah?
No, we could when it was facing. I could anyway.
Oh, you could. Oh, okay, fine, great. So let's try that, and you'll speak loudly, okay?
I'm good at that.
Okay.
Okay. So the difference between two friends both wanting the same like hat, or two friends being interested in the same guy, is like a hat doesn't have feelings, a hat doesn't have choice. So you would just like hopefully resolve it in a mature way of like deciding who gets to buy the hat. Like with a person, that person is autonomous and like has his own like free will. So like he should have a say, because he might be interested in one of the girls but not the other one. So then that solves the problem, I feel like.
Okay, like we could just consult him, you're saying. Okay. So Noah's saying, well, in a case of if somebody who has autonomy and has thoughts, right, then, that person could just decide. The thing is, I just want to raise that, like, it does depend on what kind of context we're talking about, right? Like, there's a context where like everyone's friends and everyone knows each other, and like a person could make a decision like that. But sometimes it's like a shidduch kind of situation where it's not like, and whatever, I guess it also depends on what you believe in, like terms of what, like, is there one person for you, or could you get along with a few possible different people, right? But like, you could totally see a situation where somebody, if he goes out with her first, or if she goes out with him first, then it could work out between them. But if like that person went out with someone else first, then it could work out between them, right? Like, you understand what I'm saying? Meaning there could be a situation where, like, I don't know, one person. Exactly, like Naomi is saying, both girls could be good for him. So like.
Well, also it's like I feel like if you're in the situation where it's like somebody's like recommending Shiduchim for you, it's like you're not necessarily like if somebody says like, oh, like you should meet Naomi, she's a really nice girl, but you don't actually know her, so you're not like saying like, oh, like she's gonna be my wife now, like you haven't met her yet. So it's like you might be open to going out with Naomi one week and going out with Tari another week, because like you don't actually know how it's gonna go. So I feel like some people might be like kind of dating around.
Right. So people might date around, although some people like just try to focus on one person at a time, right? Like, I don't know, could you imagine a situation where like I don't know, let's say you tell your friend, oh, I'm interested in this guy, we're going out tomorrow, we're going out in 3 days. Then you find out that tomorrow she went out with him, having not had arranged that in advance. Would you be like fine with that? That's a little awkward, right? Okay. So there is this so obviously I totally agree that shopping and Shiduchim are very, very different. And also, of course, the stakes are lower, right? Meaning if you get the hat or the sweater or not, that may or may not change your life forever, right? But like the person that you marry might, okay? And so there are differences there. But part of what is common between these two cases is the question of like, what are the ethics of like, if one person expressed interest in pursuing an opportunity of some kind, it could also be a job, right? Let's take a job, right? Let's say you want to apply for a job and like your best friend's also applying. So if you're both applying from the beginning, that happens all the time, right? Like, did you not have this when you were applying to college, maybe, that you had multiple people that you knew were applying to the same college? And in theory, you're like a little bit in competition, but not so whatever, right? But you could have a situation where you find out about a job, you apply for the job, your friend did not know about the job before you applied for it, and then kind of sneaks in and applies for the job too. Is that okay? Is that not okay? What would you guys think? Let's take the case of a job. What would you guys think? So we'll have someone from the computer first. One second. Let's see if I just want to give people here a chance to speak. Does anyone want to say? What do you think about that? Do you think that your friend has a right to apply for the job? Or
For the job, I think there is no really a problem, like, because it's a job. Like, if you have the abilities to go to, okay, go. But for a shidduch, I have the impression that the question applies to the shidduch also, or only for the job?
Yeah. Say what you think about the shidduch too.
The shidduch is like more. The shidduch is more like the men, like the decision come to the men, like not to us more. So like I will not understand a man who will say like I go out with her first and like tomorrow I go with the other girl. Like there is no sense. I will not stay with a man who are doing that. So like
Go you, Anaya.
So I think there is like really, like, of course it's different, but like for the job I think I will definitely apply, even my friend go also.
Okay, so meaning you're just saying that it depends on the situation. If it's a situation where it really is a free-for-all, like in a job or like in a hat store, then it's fine. Everybody should have equal chance. The only problem with the shidduch case is that it's just like kind of not appropriate to be interviewing multiple people, so to speak, and therefore you think that it would not be okay. But on principle, if one person expressed interest in something, you don't see a problem with someone else kind of trying to get the same opportunity. Is that
like if it's at the same time, I will say there is no problem. But like if it's after, like if I heard of someone who are applying to a job and I'm like, oh yeah, you know what, I will do that also, like now it's more complicated. But if it's at exactly the same time, I will say, oh, it's a coincidence,
Yeah, no, if it's exactly the same time, then there isn't really a question. People didn't know about each other beforehand. The question is more, when you know that somebody else expressed interest in something, are you allowed, or is it appropriate for the second person to come in and give it a shot?
Oh, okay. I will not. Okay, I didn't. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
So are we the second person or are we the first person?
Well, are you the second person or the first person? Does that make a difference in your answer?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, tell me why. What are the two sides?
Because for the job, I would say like I don't really care about the other person. I just care about what I'm doing right now, what I'm applying, and I'm doing my best, the best I can. And then what can happen?
Right. But if you're the second person,
if I'm the second person, maybe there's multiple reasons why it would be a certain person. Maybe she thought she was the best at the job, and that would have better shot at another job. Maybe she thought she was best for me.
Right. Well, right. Mm-hmm.
So I think like if it's for the job, it's also, as Anaya said, it's not the same thing, the job and the man.
Okay. True. You're applying for the job of being the spouse of this
As for
person.
the job,
Right,
I would
okay.
say the same thing. She does the best she could, and what's gonna happen, happened.
Okay.
As for the boy, if she doesn't think he is the best for her at the first place, she could tell her first.
Okay,
And
but let's say
her
both of
feeling
them,
she-
let's say both of them think that he's the best person for her. Like, doesn't it ever happen that you and a friend like the same guy? No, never. Okay.
Actually, I feel like we should be focusing less on the actual object that people are working towards and more like the relationship between the two and friends. It's like, let's say like I was set up with a guy and I'm like talking to Tari. It's like, oh, I got set up with so and so, and she's like, oh, I actually have feelings for him. I feel like if I were to then go on the date with him, that would make our friendship awkward, and like I would possibly like I might run the risk of hurting her feelings.
Mm-hmm.
I don't necessarily like. I don't know if that's so ethical.
Mm-hmm.
Because I mean, like, you know, because also like we say like sisters before misters. Like, I don't think you should like get into a real, and especially if it's like a shit up, if someone has just been suggested to you and you don't already have like an established relationship and feelings for that person.
Mhm.
Like, I don't know if it's, you know, really so nice and so like considerate for me to get involved with this guy that I don't really know that Tari actually knows and has feelings for if she's my friend.
Okay.
Um,
Okay. So what Noah is saying is that some of this has to do with the relationship between the two people who are competing for the same whatever it might be, person, job, hat, whatever, right? And that maybe it's just not worth risking a relationship with your friend when you in order to compete over that thing. Maybe that's not appropriate. Maybe that's unethical. And Aya just said that she thinks it's true of the job also, right? Okay, so let's have a look at some sources now. Let's just like try to see what does the halacha say about this. So fascinatingly, the halacha actually has a case of moving in on, in this case, a woman, okay, when one man was planning to marry a particular woman. So let's have a look at source one, okay? I'll share it on the screen so it's just easy for everybody, except it's not open on my computer. 1 second. Okay. All right. Okay. So shopping and Shiduchim. 1 second, let's see again. You like the title? Nice alliteration. Okay, here we go. Shopping and Shiduchim. Okay, so just want to see if I can see everybody better. Oh, shucks. Okay, 1 second. All right, let's see. Sorry, I just want to see if I can see everybody while I'm talking. Show small active speaker video. Come on. All right. Okay. I guess, now I think I could see everyone except myself, and I don't need to see myself. Okay, so here we go. So we're in source one, Masechet Kiddushin, okay, Daf Nun Chet, Amud Bet, okay, and here we go. So we have the Mishnah that says, Ha'omer l'chaveiro, tzei v'kadesh li isha plonit, v'halach v'kitsha la'atzmo, mikudeshet l'sheni. Okay, we have a Gemara, a Mishnah that says that, okay, so this we needed just a tiny bit of background, okay? You are allowed to send a shaliach, to send a messenger to, you know, either be Mekadesh a woman for you or to accept Kesef Kiddushin. Like, let's say you wake up on the morning of your wedding and you just don't feel like going, okay? So Noah wakes up in the morning of her wedding, doesn't feel like going, and asks Mia if she could go for her. So Mia goes instead and accepts the Kesef Kiddushin from the guy.
better not be
Okay.
wearing my dress.
Or maybe she's even wearing your dress. Okay, so, and
Wait, what?
again, you are
I'm sending Mia to go to my wedding.
to accept the ring on Noah's behalf, okay?
So it's for you,
Or
but she's going.
she's going to accept,
Marrying my husband.
yeah, on your behalf. You can send a shaliach. And let's say, like, let's say a guy could also send a different guy to be the shalem, be the person who's being mekadesh on his behalf, okay? Fine. Now, this obviously makes more sense in a situation where we're like just kind of making an agreement and not like actually having a whole wedding. You can't send someone else to your chuppah for you, like to do nisuin and to like, you know, go into yichud for you. And okay, but like holding on, accepting the ring is called erusin or kiddushin, and it can be done by a shaliach. Okay, now this is also much more relevant to a time when people used to be mekadesh a year before they actually had the party of the wedding. Okay.
What do you know the shaliach is really from the person?
How do you know the shaliach is really from this person? Okay. Okay, fine. Yeah. So we're a little concerned here that, okay, we're a little concerned about the,
Steal my husband.
steal, yes. Okay. About one person trying to steal the other person's person. Okay. Anyway, but, Naomi is asking an interesting question, which is like, how do you know if the person is actually really representing this other person or not? That is a good question. Like, does a shaliach have to prove in some way that he is representing somebody else? That's an interesting question. Let's assume that we are sure that he is representing the other person, okay, for the purposes of this discussion, okay? Okay. That's my microphone. Okay, sorry. Tov. So let us go back to our Gemara. Okay, so what happened in the Mishnah is that Reuven sent Shimon to be Mekadesh Shoshana, okay, on his behalf. Okay, Shoshana has just come into the picture. And Reuven sends Shimon, and Shimon meets Shoshana, and is like, you know what, I actually really like Shoshana. I'd like to marry her for myself. So he proposes to Shoshana. Now, Shoshana, you might not know that Reuven sent Shimon to begin with. Shimon meets you, proposes to you, you say yes. Okay, and now you're married.
I feel like there's an issue with like, because like my assumption, this might be like my modern day like Western assumption.
Yeah.
But Shoshana, like, doesn't Shoshana know that she's supposed to be marrying Reuven? So if Shimon comes and proposes to her, shouldn't she be like, I'm kind of supposed to be marrying someone else?
Right. So I would say it's possible that Shoshana knows that she's supposed to marry Reuven, but it's also possible that this is the first time the family and she are meeting this guy, and like think back to a different time when it wasn't like I don't know, you know, I mean, we obviously like we much prefer, it's much better. We say that a woman should meet the guy before she marries him, but by the way, it could also be she met Reuven for an hour already. She liked him fine. Now Shimon comes along and is actually really charming, and like they spend hours together and they chill and they really like each other more than she likes Reuven. So now Shimon proposes to her and Shoshana accepts from Shimon, and now they're married.
I feel like Shoshana has the right to do that. Like it's ultimately her, like it should be her decision who she marries. If she'd rather marry Shimon, she should marry Shimon. But I feel like it's immoral on Shimon's part to like start flirting with his friends, like
Good.
fiance.
Okay, so you could have been the Mishnah and the Gemara. That's actually what the Gemara says, meaning the Mishnah says that Shoshana is married to Shimon in this circumstance. However, the Gemara,
Terrible friend.
but Shimon is a terrible friend. Now he got lucky because he ended up with Shoshana, and like maybe that's worth it to him to ruin his relationship with Reuven in order to marry Shoshana. However, he did do something that was not appropriate. So, yes.
He kind of lied
To Reuven, to Shoshana.
Shoshana is like lying by not
Yeah.
saying.
Yes, lying by
Lying
omission.
Lying by omission.
Yes.
So I don't know if Shoshana if she was aware of that when she was marrying him. So she didn't really marry him for who he is because he didn't truly say the truth about himself.
The truth
That he was really representing somebody, supposed to be
are you
representing
saying
somebody
this problem
else.
that she's marrying a liar?
Yeah.
Like that is an issue Shoshana and he might have to work through because they are married. Shoshana, I hope you don't mind. If you mind, I will stop. You're okay? Okay. Okay. but yeah, that is an issue that they may need to work through. Okay.
I just think
Because
that, like, I'd ruin a friendship for you. It's like the heart
I ruin a friendship for you. Okay, fine. Great. Okay. So, Beseder. Okay. So the Gemara actually, though, agrees with Noah that Ha'omer l'chaverot tzei v'kadesh Tana masha asa asui elishana hagva min hagramut. It says he did it. What he did works. In other words, they're married, but it was a tricky thing to do. It was not the right thing. Okay. So now the Gemara says, "V'tana didan halach nami dekatani halach b'ramut." Okay, and the Gemara is trying to say that in our Mishnah, they're also hinting that it wasn't so right, because it says, if you said to your friend, "Go and marry me this woman," and he went and was makadesh her for himself, right? It doesn't just say v'kidsha la'atzma. It says v'halach v'kidsha la'atzma. That's also implying that it wasn't so nice, right? You went and did that. That's what we say when we're not so happy with something that happened. Okay, so our Mishnah also agrees that it wasn't a great thing to do. Okay,
Can I ask a question?
please.
Is there an issue, like, in terms of him being a shaliach and, like, not doing his shlichut properly?
Yeah, so there is an issue. In other words, in general, in shlichut, if a shaliach is not mekayem the will of the mishalech, of the person who sent him, then the shlichut is broken. Okay, so for example, we have a case like that in Me'ila, where let's say there's a little complicated, but it illustrates the idea. Let's take Leah. Okay, now Leah, you have money that is hekdesh, and you forget that it's hekdesh, and you send Mia to the shop with that money to buy you apples to eat. Okay, so the halakha in general, even though there's ancient with Varavera, in Me'ila there is. So Leah, if you send Mia to the shop with your money that you forgot is hekdesh, and Mia buys you the apples that you wanted, okay, then who did Me'ila? Leah did Me'ila, because Leah sent Mia as a shlicha, and she did the shlichut. So, and again, as an exception to the rule of shlichut varavera, maybe partially because Me'ila is always b'shogeg, always without knowledge, so neither one knew. Okay, beseder. However, Mia, if you bought oranges instead of apples with that money, then you did Me'ila. Why? Because the shlichut, you broke the shlichut. Leah asked you to buy apples. If you had bought the apples and everything went according to plan, you would still be acting as her shaliach, and under the rules of exception to shlichut varavera, you would have done Me'ila. But, I mean, Leah would have done Me'ila. But since you didn't do what you were asked, you broke the shlichut. Now, willy-nilly, you're the one who did Me'ila, right? Because Leah didn't do Me'ila because you're not her shaliach anymore. So who used the money of a hekdesh inappropriately? You did. Now you didn't know, but that's the whole definition of Me'ila, is not knowing. Okay? So I'm just giving that as an example, which I know is kind of convoluted, but it illustrates the idea of like a shaliach breaks the shalichut if he or she does something not in accordance with the will of the person. However, that might not be the nice thing to do, or in the case of Me'ila, it actually worked out well for Leah, but that might not be a nice thing to do, but all that it does is break the shlichut. Okay, so in answer to your question, Mia, like, yeah, he's no longer the shliach of Ruvain, but that's worth it to him because he gets to marry Shisham. So that's it. Okay. Okay. So now the Gemara continues. Yes, please. Mm-hmm.
Is he like way out? Why don't you send a shlichut that is already married?
Because you could marry another woman.
What?
Mina Torah, you could marry another woman.
No.
At the time that they were writing this, you could marry another second wife. Okay. Yeah. I guess if you're sending a shaliach, maybe you should send somebody that you think is really not that likable. You know, like just to kind of for insurance. I don't know. Or send a woman. Yeah, you could send a woman as a shaliach. I think so. Yeah. So yeah, maybe send a woman, maybe, and then right, problem solved. Okay, send someone who's not allowed to marry that person. Send a mamzer. Send a kohen if the woman is a grusha. Like, you could actually, it's a good thinking, okay? In the handbook of Shlichut, that's a good thing to add. Okay, so let's just read on a little bit, okay? And the Gemara continues and says, Rabin Chasida Azal Kiddusha Itzel Bare. This is actually a very weird story, okay? Be prepared to be creeped out, okay? Rabin Chasida went to be Makadesh, a wife for his son, and Kidsha Lanafshe, and he married her himself. Okay, so that's weird. Like, now, to be fair, it could be he went and he found that, like, she was double the age of the son and, like, wasn't appropriate. But it is kind of weird that he was going to scout out a wife for his daughter, for his son, and then he marries her himself. Okay, so the Gemara says, "V'hatanya masha asosui elashanahag bo minhag ramaut." Ravin, his name is Ravin Chasida. I assume his name was Chasida because he was a Chassid. He was a good person. Now, how could he have done that? Like, that's the wrong thing. He's a trickster. So the Gemara answers, "Lo yahavu aniyale." Well, he tried first to marry her for his son, but the family refused to allow her to marry his son. They thought the son was not a big enough Talmid Chacham. They heard bad things about the son. They thought the son wasn't going to make a good parnasa. They didn't like the picture. I have no idea. They didn't want to marry the son. So then is it okay do you think that makes it okay to marry her himself? Let's take away the slight weirdness of the father-son thing, okay?
Can't, you know, be like if he can't marry his son to this girl, then like if the family won't agree to it, then he's broken shlichut. He can't achieve the end goal.
Right.
So at that point, I mean, like halachically, like it seems like halachically fine. Can you imagine if your dad did that?
I know, that would be so weird. But let's make it back to a case that would be more normal. Like, let's say your friend, like the guy didn't want to go out with your friend. You gave her the chance first, but he said no to her. So what do you want? You know, right? Or the sweater didn't fit on her or whatever.
Just marrying your friend was supposed to marry. If she was like, no, I don't want to marry your friend.
Right.
I want to marry you or whatever. And then you were like, I feel like that's the case where you have to go back and be like, this is what happened. How do you feel about it? Like, would it hurt your feelings if I married her?
And what was easier?
Okay.
Why are you sending us Shalia?
Right. First of all, maybe the lesson is to go marry people on our own, but okay. But like you could translate it into just setting people up and then it's normal, right? People often will ask.
Could you imagine like your friend went off and was supposed to like marry this girl on your behalf and then he comes back and he's married to her?
Okay, yeah, that would be so weird. Right. So what Noah just said is actually, you could have been the Gemara again, because the Gemara does say the next point in the Gemara, we're over here, if you're looking on the screen here, I by Leila Odue. He should have told him. In other words, what Noah said, which is, well, tell your friend, I tried for you. I tried on your behalf. It didn't work. Yeah, like, let him know. Like, don't just come back. That looks so tricky and mean, right? So, Ibai Leilo Duye. So, so now remember that there was no WhatsApp then and no Zoom then, etc. So, what do you think Ravin Chasida might have been worried about? Maybe
he's in Israel, she's in Babel, it's like a long journey.
Or even within Israel, like get on the donkey, or within Babel, get on the donkey, go back to wherever you were, then go back. So the Gemara says, Savar adahachi bahachi ata inish achrina mekadeshla. This woman was very sought out. And so it says here, he thought that in the meantime, another man would come and propose to her. And he would lose his chance. That happens. No, the real truth is that, like, all kidding aside, it does actually happen that sometimes somebody says, like, I'm not ready right now, whatever. And then you say, okay, I won't pursue it. And then 3 months later, you find out that they're like seriously dating somebody, but you were giving them their space, right? So like, it doesn't, in other words, sometimes you lose an opportunity. right? When you waste time. So again, here, we're not talking about, we're talking about a situation where also people didn't get to know each other so much. So it's not like there was that much opportunity to, like it really could happen within a day or a week that might happen. So, yeah.
Like the cases that Mara is talking about are so relevant in like today's day of like actually marrying for love and like knowing the person that you're going to marry and like not seeing women as property to like snatch up.
Right. Although I will just say, like, it, I don't know, like it definitely, like it, just let's continue. Let's make a little more headway in the Gemara. Okay, we're turning back on. Okay. Now we're going to talk about another case. It's very hot in here. I don't know if it's hot where you guys are, but we're boiling. Okay. We'll have to. I think we'll finish the Gemara, and we might have to continue next time. Okay. But let's finish the Gemara. The Gemara is super fascinating. So the Gemara continues with. Let me share the screen again. 1 minute. Okay. Shopping and Shiduchim. Okay. So the Gemara continues here, okay, with Rabba Bar Bar Chana, okay? So Rabba Bar Bar Chana, Yahiv leZuzeh l'Rav. Rabba Bar Bar Chana, one of the Amoraim, gives money to Rav, the first Amora, one of the Gedolei Hador, okay? Amar Zavna Nihalei Lahai Ara. Please go and buy me the following land, like this land, okay? So here we are in the hat shop, or in the sweater shop, okay? And so he says, sell me this land. Azal Zavna Lanafshe. So he goes and he buys it for himself. Rav buys it for himself.
That's stealing.
That seems like steal, not with his money, with his own money.
Oh, okay.
Not with his money, but with his own money. But still, like, he asked him to go check out this, like, go buy a house for me, go buy this thing for me. And he went and bought it for himself. Like, that seems really wrong. So v'hatanya, masha asui elashana min hagramaot. So the Gemara says, well, but doesn't it say that it's a tricky thing to do? And Rav was a good man. He was one of the Gedolei Hador. How could he do that? So the Gemara says, Bagada alimi havale. It was a piece of land that belonged to these very strong people. These very strong is not the right word. Like fancy people, okay, people who had like very high standards, or very like kind of tough people. They felt it was beneath their dignity to sell it to Rabba Bar Bar Chana, and they only wanted to sell it to Rav. So what is this very similar to? Right, the case of the girl who didn't want to marry the younger guy and only wanted to marry the older guy, or at least her family felt that way. Okay. So what does the Gemara say again? Exactly, same case. Right, exactly. So the Gemara then says what it said last time, which is but he should have told him. You can't just go and buy it for yourself. You have to tell them. You have to tell them, I'm sorry they didn't want to sell it to you. I'm going to buy it. Hope that's okay. And then again, what's going to be the answer? What might happen in the interim? They'll sell it to somebody else. Exactly. So Naomi just said, why doesn't Rav sell it to Rabbi Bar Bar Chana? Okay, very good. So that's going to be the next story in the Gemara. Right. Yeah, could be. Okay, could be. So that's going to be actually the next story in the Gemara. We're going to see that in a second. So the Gemara continues and says, right? They thought that somebody else would buy it. Now we have another case, which is going to bring up Naomi's point. Very nice. The Gemara says the following: Rav Gidol hava mahapech b'hahi ara. Rav Gidol, another one of the rabbis, was looking at a particular piece of land. Azal Rabbi Abba Zavna. Rabbi Abba came along and bought it. Okay, so this is not a case of a shaliach now. This is a case of Rav Gidol was interested in a particular piece of land. He was in negotiations, and then Rabbi Abba comes along and buys it first. Okay, he's willing to sign the lease first. Okay, so this is interesting because like the other cases were a little bit worse, right? I sent you to do something for me and then you went and like were a traitor, right? Those are the other cases that we've seen. Here it's more like competition, you know what I mean? But like, okay, I expressed it just first, but you got it first, right? Sort of like more like the job or whatever, right? That kind of thing.
I'm trying to negotiate the price down. Like I don't want to pay the full price. So I'm negotiating Naomi, and Tari comes along and says, "Oh, I'll pay like list price for the house."
That's how American did with the mask.
Oh, okay, right. like buying masks nowadays with all the price gouging. Okay, excellent. So this is an interesting question. So what did Rabbi Abba do the wrong thing? Because Rav Gidl had expressed interest first in the house. Okay. So Amar Azal Rav Gidl Kavle the Rabbi Zera. So Rav Gidl went and complained to Rabbi Zera, like went to Beit Din kind of, and complained to Rabbi Zera about Rabbi Abba. Azal Rabbi Zera v'Kavle the Rabbi Yitzchak Nafka. And Rabbi Zera took it up to Rabbi Yitzchak Nafka, another person. Okay, so Rav Gidl was from Bavel. We can tell from his name Rav. And Rabbi Abba, okay, was from Eretz Yisrael. Okay, and so Rabbi Abba goes to Rabbi Zera in Eretz Yisrael and says, look what he did to me. So they say, you know what, let's wait until the Regel when Rav Gidl comes to visit us. Sounds like Rav Gidl used to come to yeshiva around the Regel. Like it is after the Beit HaMikdash was destroyed, but they used to visit Eretz Yisrael, okay, to learn like we do also, okay. So Kisalik Ashkeche, so Rav Gidl comes and Rav Gidl. Sorry, it was Rabbi Abba who's going to come visit the other people. Okay, so Kisalik Ashkeche Amrle. So when Rabbi Abba, who's the one who did the wrong thing here, comes, he says that Rabbi Yitzchak Nafcha says to him, Ani hamahapech b'charao barcher v'natla menu mai. He says, let's say there's a poor person who's kind of looking over a cake that's baked on coals. A charara is a kind of cake. So let's say he's looking at this cake and he wants to buy it. And then someone else comes and buys it. What would you say about that guy? And he says, Nikra Russia. Does this remind you of a case in Tanakh, by the way? What case in Tanakh does this remind you of?
With the sheep and David.
Excellent, right? Remember with the sheep and David HaMelech? And like, right after David marries Bathsheba, raised with Bathsheba, and that whole thing, and Uriah, and then the Navi comes and is like, so what do you think about a case like this? You know, and David is like, oh, that guy's a terrible person. He's like, well, you're the guy, right? So that's what they're doing to Rabbi Abba here. We're saying, what do you think about a case where like one person is interested in something and then the other guy takes it? So he says he's a Russia. So the Gemara says, well, Amar my time Avid Hachi. He says, why'd you do that? And the Gemara, he says, Amrle lo havayadana. I didn't know he wanted the land. Like I saw listed. I went and bought it. Tari went and bought it, but like she didn't know that Anaya was in negotiations for it. Like she just didn't know. Okay, so that's what happened here. I didn't know. So he says, Hashtanami Niklani Laimar. So he says, okay, so give it to him. Give him the land then, if you didn't know. Right? So the Gemara says, so the rabbi who bought it says, Amrle zvuni lo maznimnina le, da'ara kamai tehiva lo misamna milta, ibai b'matana neshkale. He says, I can't sell it to him because it was the first land I ever bought. And it's a bad omen to sell the first land you buy. Like selling something means you've come on hard times and like you need to sell it. And like, I don't want to sell it because I feel like that's going to make an ayin hara for me, but I'm happy to give it to him as a present. Okay?
Well, then he doesn't own it.
No, he owns it. If I give something to you as a present and you take ownership of it in one of the ways we take ownership of things, like you did, you did one of the acts of ownership on land, then you will own it. You could give something as a gift, okay? So he's willing to give it to him as a gift, which is pretty amazing, right? Okay. So now look what happens. Rav Gidl lo nachitla, dichtiv v'sonei matanot yichyeh. So he says, I don't want to sell it. So Rav Gidl says, well, I don't want to take it because I don't want to accept gifts. Says the Mishnah, a person who hates gifts live on it or use it. Tikaria Aretz Rabbanan. And it became called the land of the rabbis, meaning it was used for shiurim, whatever, like they used it jointly because each one didn't want to use it because of different reasons. Okay, so we're out of time for now. Okay, and it's very hot where the people live are. Okay, so we're going to. Oh, did you say the sound changed? Is it okay now? It's okay. Is that a long time ago? Is everything okay? Can you hear me? Okay. I'm sorry. Okay. Anyway, we're going to pause for now. And next time we'll pick up here and try to see how halacha l'maaseh this is going to apply to us in real life today. Okay? So yishar koach, everybody. It's like very good to see everybody wherever you are. Okay? And see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.